interesting because the common thinking when it comes to fitness professionals, things end up being categorized into cardiovascular, strength, and flexibility. So kind of, taking more of an advanced look. I mean, you're starting to have to look at mobility when it comes to the thoracic spine and kind of incorporating, or when you're seeing your client do various movements within the gym, your push, pulls, noticing errors when it comes to movement within the thoracic spine. It's important for the fitness professional to add some thoracic range of motion exercises to their program. For example, what would be some examples?
Okay, the examples of that pretty simply if they're going through their program and they may have started up with a light warm up, or maybe even prior to that they're doing some tissue work on a foam roll. Then at that point they could use that foam roll to do some extensions with the thoracic spine. One of my tricks that I've always used for probably 20 years now is just taping two tennis balls together and putting them on the thoracic spine and then rocking back and forth in a flexion extension motion, and then work segmentally up the spine just a little bit. Or even simple, they could get them to sit on a stability ball, put their hands behind their head kind of in a prisoner position, if you will, with the elbows flared out, and they can rock from side to side. That's going to give them a little bit more mobility into the extension. That thoracic spine is supposed to move, and when they run into problems in the gym, whether it be lower back or in this case we're just staying on the shoulder, they've got to be able to do those movements. Some other simple movements can be just sitting back on a stability ball and going into extension, or you could use a med ball and put it on there. Tools to just kind of, if you will, force the spine into extension and just work on 5 or 6 motions in each direction and do that on a daily basis, and they can start mobilizing and very simply moving the thoracic spine. I think when we use the term mobilization, people start immediately thinking that's some big advanced topic, and that's something that the physiotherapist should be doing. But in our case, when we're talking about mobility, we're just talking about getting that thoracic spine to move, because the movement's going to be made up somewhere, and I'd rather have it move in the thoracic spine than have it move in the glenohumeral joint.
Okay. So big compensation strategy you see is the glenohumeral joint taking over or doing the majority of the movement, and that's kind of your clue to kind of look at other places like the thoracic spine, and you were saying you look at other areas like the hips, low back.
Yes, I definitely look at the hips. A lot of times the mobility in the hips will cause compensations all the way up the spine, and it's not really. It is a bit of an advanced topic, but when you think about how the body moves, if the hips don't move very well, the low back is going to make up that movement. And when that movement is made up by the lower back, the thoracic spine is going to say, you know what, I don't have to move so much. And when the thoracic spine doesn't move, then you're starting to move up the chain, and you're hitting the scapular areas. They're not stabilizing, and they're moving perhaps too much. And then, again, it's all getting stuck at the end of the chain there in the glenohumeral joint.
Okay. And then, are there any other tips in the gym that you kind of recommend for fitness professionals? Exercises to avoid, or exercise that you think are good for the shoulder to do?
Absolutely. When we talk about shoulder exercise, I think some of the great exercises that we try to do are some of the dumbbell flies and a variety of things in different motions. For the fitness professional, I try to tell them if you're going to do any overhead movements when you're doing shoulder work, such as shoulder presses or push presses or a variety of other things in that direction, I would tend to stay away from a barbell. When people tend to do overhead presses with a barbell, they get a little bit too much internal rotation, and because the hand, as it presses up, the wrist tends to want to supinate a little bit. So it's going to roll to the outside. If you have a bar, you're forcing that motion, and since the hand can't supinate, it's going to roll the shoulder in a little bit more, and you're going to internally rotate the shoulder, and that's going to lead right into an impingement. We want the shoulder to try to work naturally. So whenever I'm doing overhead stuff, I would definitely recommend that people use dumbbells or kettlebells. I'm a huge fan of the kettlebell for shoulder work because of the amount of stability that it requires in the thoracic spine, and also the way that connects with the scapula. That's what I was looking for there. So the kettlebell forces a great amount of scapular stabilization. So I think a dumbbell and or a kettlebell are a great way to go, and really try to avoid using barbells going overhead.
Oh, that's a really good tip. And then what are your thoughts when it comes to flexibility? You think of, I have some clients that'll come in to see me for the first time, and they say, I do an exercise with them, and then they want to do a stretch right after it. What are your thoughts when it comes to, stretching out the shoulder?
Well, I think one of the things a lot of times people talk about, I have a tight shoulder. They may be limiting their range of motion in their shoulder, and they say they can't move that up very much. Again, I look at the whole complex all the way up the chain from the hips all the way into the shoulder, but many times what I've found, and I don't know how most people look at it, but for me, I find people that have quote-unquote tight shoulders, typically the glenohumeral joint actually moves too much, and they actually have a hypermobile shoulder, but because it moves too much, they can't control it and get a good full range of motion. So with that, it's usually, again, lack of scapular control. And when they don't have that scapular control, they immediately impinge the shoulder. And then they go into a movement and they say, oh, my shoulder's tight, I need to stretch it. And then if you really isolate the shoulder, put them down on a table or down on the floor and check the mobility of their glenohumeral joint, then they're probably going to be, it wouldn't surprise me if they're actually move more than they should, but they just don't have the control to go through a good range of motion, so they feel tight. But where they really need to end up stretching things out are some of the muscles in, again, going to the thoracic spine, going to the scapulas, getting those to move correctly and move under control is a real important thing. So when they're looking to say, oh, my shoulders are tight, they need to stretch things out a little bit. It's not necessarily the shoulder they might need to work on. They may need to stretch some other areas.
Well, I think that's it, Tim. How can people get more information on you and your services in your company?
Well, absolutely. They can go to the web, and they can go to unlimitedathlete.com, and unlimited athlete is one word, and it's singular, and it's unlimitedathlete.com, and they can find a lot of information about me, about some of the athletes that I work with, some of the programs that I offer, or they can contact my office, and that is at area code 253-630-4160. And that's one of the best ways to get a hold of me, and I do write for quite a bit of websites, so a lot of my information is out there. So if people want to just go ahead and Google me as well, they can find all sorts of information of stuff that I've put out on the web, and I have in a variety of different places.
Okay, exercises for injury listeners. I encourage you to go visit Tim Vagen's website, Unlimited Athlete, and I'm looking forward to bringing another interview to you very soon. So take care and keep reading the blog, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.